All right, hey everybody, TG here, and we're going to be diving into the market. It has been a challenging thing out there, and we're starting to see a lot of breadth narrowing. So that means that fewer stocks are actually holding up the market, and the market is still up. So we're going to be going through that. We had a 2-hour live session with the rest of the Moxie crew yesterday, so we're going to give kind of an abbreviated version of that today and kind of go through some things that I'm seeing out there. As always, profitpilot.com. If you guys are interested in who I am, a little bit more about me, and some newsletters, come over and check it out, profit-pilot.com. All right, so this market, right? I keep looking for a pullback that's going to eventually come, and it's just not happening quite yet. It sure seems like it is really close because, let's see, Friday, right here, going into the 4th of July weekend, and this is something I told the subscribers too, that, hey, usually the week running up or leading up to the 4th of July is bullish. It's like rah, rah, America, it's bullish. And that was very true for the indexes. It wasn't necessarily true for a lot of stocks out there. So that was a challenging week. And then one way that I am looking at this is saying how overbought the market was definitely on Friday was this giant gap between price and the 8 EMA on the hourly chart. And then also just the fact that price was way outside of that third ATR on the hourly chart. And then we can also see here on the daily that we had price hitting the third ATR. So, by these metrics, the market is kind of extended. It's kind of hitting its upper boundaries in areas to where pullbacks would be, starting to happen. And then we look at the hourly 50, we can see that it has not touched the hourly 50 ever since it started to get over the hourly 50. So at some point that's going to need to be touched. All these things are kind of being set into motion that needs to happen. It's just kind of a question of when's it going to happen. And coming in here yesterday, talk about a wild ride. So market was down, market was up. Amazon was pulling up the rest of the market, all that kind of stuff. And then even today, we open with a move up here. It's a double top, it gets sold into. You're thinking, okay, that makes sense, but it's still not quite ready to go down. Now, the FOMC minutes are coming out later today, and there's usually action, not necessarily the day of, but the day after. So that might be a bit of a trigger for something like that. But this does look like, here's kind of a double top, and it looks to me like that might be this. It's an upside down W, it's an inverse elf shoe. It looks to me like that might be the reason and the motivation for something to start moving down. I just don't see how this can keep hanging up that much longer. They're just doing everything they can to keep this thing oscillating right in through here, and we can watch the Moxie indicator move down. It's even down even further here. So that's kind of crazy right there. And then the Nasdaq, which, as I said, seems to be getting held up almost exclusively by Amazon and then Apple, and then I think Microsoft is up too. And it opened with a gap up, and no surprise that the gap got sold into, but then it's still hanging right here at the 15-minute 50. Like it just won't break trend right there. But the fact that it opened with a gap up, not too surprising, because that's really up there. So if we look here on the 15, it was just up in no man's land, right? It's kind of the same thing here, kind of opened up, no man's land. And then up here, it is outside of that third ATR. And then on the daily chart, it is definitely outside of that third ATR and pulling away from the 8 EMA. This thing, talk about just bullish, but overly bullish. It's getting kind of crazy. So we're looking at that. Another way that I'm looking at this as well is on the hourly chart. We can see that price keeps going up and up and up and up. And the Moxie indicator is basically coasting. It's not really supporting price, but it's also not taking it down. It's just coasting. So that is a form of negative divergence. It's a form of, it's not really being supported. It's kind of like, okay, I'm just going to hang out here and just do this. So yeah, Samuk, you're right. The market is being held up by about 5 stocks. That's what everybody keeps talking about. So the internals are not looking that great. I think a majority of stocks are below their midline on their Bollinger Bands, and participation is down. It's kind of weird out there. Then we look at the Dow, and we had a nice run last week. But as I also said with the Nasdaq or the S&P, the the Dow had not touched its hourly 50 for quite some time. And then what happened on Monday? Boom, or Tuesday rather, right there, pull back to the hourly 50. So this is what I'm talking about when I say the longer the price stays away or off of the hourly 50, the sooner it's going to be coming to want to touch it. And that's what we see here. And then, so for now, price has bounced off of the hourly 50, but I'm kind of looking here at the 15-minute time frame and kind of thinking, this looks like an inverse trampoline move. And remember, an inverse trampoline move is when price is over the 50, but the Moxie indicator is below 0. So I'm looking at that and saying, price is over the 50. The Moxie indicator is below 0. I know it's green, but it's below 0. And then the other thing to consider is we have price trying to move up across a downtrending 15-minute 50. Okay, so this might start to show some issues. This might be the beginning of like a little pullback or some more sideways chop or something not positive for the Dow Jones. And then right here, yes, I see that price is basically over the daily 50, but the Moxie indicator is kind of below 0, so a mixed bag for the Dow Jones. And then for the IWM, the small caps have not been having a good time. What I was looking for over the last few days is I kind of thought things were going to be getting a little bit more bullish going into the 4th of July as the SPY and as the NASDAQ did. The IWM did not. So right in through here, where I got it right was here. Price, I was looking for price to pull back, wanted price to come back down to the hourly 50 like the Dow Jones just did, like I'm projecting that the S&P needs to do. And so that happened. We got price to come back down to the hourly 50. And then you could see here that there was some divergence. So price down, Moxie indicator up on the 15. And then price started to move up. And this all looked pretty good, but it was about this time that despite the IWM being up and despite the NASDAQ and the SPY being up, a lot of the names that I was looking at and a lot of names I was trading were not responding. This was on Thursday that the IWM was up, but a lot of names that I was trading were going down on Thursday, the Thursday before the 4th of July weekend. So that was not a ton of fun. And then once we got here underneath the 15-minute 50, it's just been kind of moving down. Now, okay, so that's fine, but the IWM has basically been going sideways for a very long time. All right, it's just been going sideways for a very, very long time. And let me show you over here on the weekly and the monthly. And I'll just say, for now, I just don't see this thing really falling apart. Like, it can definitely keep going sideways for quite some time, but I just don't see it falling apart quite yet. It is still over some of these more major moving averages, and boy, it's just been going sideways for a long time. Another way to kind of look at that, FFTY, and you can see the FFTY, which is the IBD 50, has been going sideways for a very long time too, and without falling apart. So that's kind of a thought, and you can see that here. It's just kind of been going sideways. So there's really not much to do other than what I thought was going to be a nice move into the 4th of July weekend, which only turned out to be in about 5 stocks. We just didn't quite get anything. So that's been kind of a bummer and stuff. Now, I will show you a couple things that we did discuss and that has worked out. So NEO, somebody was asking about NEO yesterday, and it was right here at the hourly 50, and they were talking about a double bottom on the 15-minute time frame. And even without looking at the 15-minute time frame at that time, I looked at this and said, I just don't see that this is going to work out. I'm not so sure about this because, number one, the 8 was below the 21. So the fast-moving average was below the slow-moving average, and that's bearish technically. And I said, this was already kind of a funky little move. Like there was basically this little pop right here was kind of out of nowhere anyway because of news, and it got sold into. After 2 days of pop, they sold it in, and then it came down here, and I thought, this just doesn't look like a pattern that it's going to be able to really stay up on, especially with the NASDAQ and the SPY being as high as they are. I just don't see why this is going to keep moving to the upside. And then lo and behold, now that we look at the 15, we can see this was an inverse trampoline move. Price should not be over the 50 if the Moxie indicator is below 0, which is what I just pointed out a couple minutes ago on the Dow Jones for its 15-minute time frame. So that's why I'm saying, that Dow Jones looks like it could be at just the right moment that it wants to roll over, which is also kind of what I think with the NASDAQ and the SPY. It's like this should be rolling over anytime soon. Like, where the heck's the pullback? But the other thing you can see here for NEO yesterday is price tried to go up across a downtrending moving average. doesn't like that, right? Doesn't like that, especially with the Moxie indicator below 0. So that's something to be looking out for. And then I got about I don't know, about 4 or 5 different examples. If you guys want to start throwing me some names of what you're looking at, what you're seeing, maybe even some shorts, because I think we're right on the precipice of a pullback. So if you guys want to see some shorts, let me know. I will say that it looks like a lot of things have already shorted right now. So something like this QFin, I wanted to show you this example so that you can kind of start understanding how things move and kind of so you can start training your eyes for stuff like this. Number one, QFin, super high, right? It was very, very high on the daily time frame. It had been running the third ATR for a very long time. It got really far away from the daily 50, and then it started to deteriorate. And you could see that it started to deteriorate right here as price started to chop through the hourly 50. So when it's in a good trend, look, it follows the hourly 50 just fine. And then you can see it starts to cut through and then cut through and then cut through and all that stuff. And in the middle, right there is your Moxie price trigger to the downside. So that's what's telling you. You can see that it's right there. The Moxie indicator went negative. And so what that's telling you is that on this time frame, it's no longer positive. There's no more support coming in from the Moxie indicator, so be careful about that. And then just like I showed you on NEO and the Dow about those inverse trampoline moves on the 15, you can see that the Moxie indicator was below 0 and price started, or the 15-minute 50 started to head down even though price was trying to pop up over it. So those were multiple inverse trampoline moves on the 15-minute time frame that you needed to watch out for. All right, and then we get into PLTR. Somebody asked me about PLTR last week here on Facebook and YouTube, and I said, I don't know about it. It looks kind of rough out through here. I was looking at this thinking, okay, price has been going up across the daily 50 without touching it. And I said, what makes me nervous is this giant gap between price and the daily 50. A lot of times price wants to come back down and touch moving averages. This would be the first move, and this would be the second move coming back into support. I was like, I don't know, that looks pretty sketchy. And so then what you could see here is price did get underneath the 15-minute 50 and then short. And where did it go? Right to the daily 50. So when you look at something like this and there's a big gap, if you get the timing right, there is an opportunity from here to here. And you can see that it began on the 15-minute time frame. And you can see that with price moving up, Moxie indicator not really responding. There was a negative divergence. And then you can see the Moxie indicator below 0 and price below the 15-minute 50, and down on it went. And then to show you some of the names that I would like to look at. So I want to show you how we're looking for something that does move to the upside whenever the market is ready and something's going to support it. So how about this? Talking about PLTR and how price got over the daily 50 and then pulled back to the daily 50. Well, in the right circumstances, when things are ready to go, that can also be that pullback into the daily 50 can also be your entry point. That's the kind of stuff that we'd be looking for. And you can see here, this was the first move over the daily 50, and then you get price coming back down here into the daily 50. So that one worked out. The Moxie indicator was looking good. The Moxie indicator was looking good here too. Everything was pretty nice on that. And you can see it followed the 15-minute 50 with the Moxie indicator above 0. So that was a good trade. Now, a couple others that I see kind of setting up like that. ATRS ran through here. I was doing some paper trading on it, and you could see it was getting right over the daily 50 and just kind of hovering right there. Now, I put a paper trade on it because the Moxie indicator here wasn't quite ready. It was still below 0 a little bit, and so you don't know if that's going to be an inverse trampoline move or not. As it turns out, it worked for a little bit, but then it needed to come back down and test support. So once again, look at this. Price coming back down into the daily 50. Right, it was about here, the hourly 200, and then it started to move up, and you can see the 8 was over the 21 the whole time, and the Moxie indicator fired. So there's one ticker that did nicely. And then let me show you another one that I have my eye on that isn't there yet, but looks like it could be developing quite nicely. So going to have to give this some time. But if you look at Wix, what did it do? You can see it's the same thing, got over the daily 50, and then kind of said, oh, okay, well, I can't keep running too far away from the daily 50. I got to come back to it and find some support. And for now, it's getting close. We don't know yet if it's going to go further down. Like, this is not an entry because the Moxie indicator is below 0 and price is getting trapped by the underside of a downtrending hourly 50. So I don't see this as an entry, especially when I'm expecting the market to pull back. But you know, I do want to see price either go sideways or down to get closer to the daily 50 SMA. And if it can do that, kind of like ATRS or EC, then fantastic. Then we can look at that as an entry sometime later. Let's see, Jabber Lulu. Going with the rest of the NASDAQ. Now, I'm looking at these things thinking, okay, I don't know how much longer they're going to be able to run. They did do a nice bounce off of the hourly 50 and the Moxie indicator is above 0. So for that, it's been correct. It's been accurate. It follows the rules. You can even see it did another bounce off of the hourly 50. And so far, it's been riding the daily 8 pretty darn well, which is the sign of a very strong move, but maybe a little bit excessive. And you can even see through here, it started to get a little bit overbought. You see how it got outside of that third ATR and it got off of the daily 8. You know, that's telling you it's a little overbought. And that's when price started to come back down. You can see the same thing here. Notice that price hadn't touched the hourly 50 for quite some time, and then it finally did. So that's the kind of stuff that I try and show you of, okay, here are the support areas, here's where we try to bounce, here's what I want to see, and if we see it, great, and if we don't, then you got to watch out. So just be careful. This thing has been running pretty well, and I don't know how much further it's going to run with if the market starts to pull back. Some of those names, DBX was another one that's just been like on fire, doing really well. And you can see kind of the same thing. It's bounced off of the hourly 50 and it's been riding the daily 8 EMA. But you know, how long is that going to last? Part of what I was talking about with this one is you look left, and I drew a line here so that you guys can see it, but it is running right into its IPO price. So how many people do you think are going to be up there starting to hit their sell programs and say, oh, I finally got my money back from this IPO, I'm going to go sell it. And so there might be some resistance in through there. And so I caution that may not be the greatest place to initiate a position on that. Trying to think that there are a couple others like that in that area. But maybe as some possible shorts, let me talk about a couple things here. And you guys let me know if you have anything of interest as well. So Twitter. And, you know, I talk about this as far as, you know, Wix or ATRS or EC or PLTR, Palantir. What do they all have in common? The thing I'm talking about with them is that they had their first move over the daily 50, and now there's a giant gap between price and the daily 50. And so it seems likely that at some point it's going to either want to come back down to the daily 50 or at least have a little bit of a reprieve. You can see that it did that here, all the way back down here. It went all the way back down to the daily 50 after they had their big earnings run. So that's kind of what I'm saying is when they get overbought, you think about the next area of support, and generally it's the daily 50. And you can see here that back several months ago, it did do that. And I'm kind of looking at here and saying, you know, it might be wanting to do the same thing sometime in the near future. So perhaps if you guys want to, you know, find something like that, start looking for Twitter to start moving back to its daily 50. All right, then switch SWCH. Kind of the same deal, super extended, super elevated. Now, this one could be a little bit trickier. You know, I would still say if it's going to go down, watch for it to go down towards the daily 50. But we're going to have to make sure it actually does that. Number one, it's going to have to break down below the hourly 200. But you can see before it's bounced right off the hourly 200. So I've just kind of put this one out there on your radar if this thing happens, that if it can start breaking through the hourly 200 and the daily 21, then it could be looking for the daily 50. If not, then it can keep going up, and I would really, if it's going to keep going up, then I would look for price to stay over the hourly 200 and then follow the hourly 50. So, you know, just like here, you can see this situation, it stayed over the hourly 200 and followed the hourly 50 and then continued on up. Yeah, Jabber, let's see, GLD. So for me, this would be the end of this move. This was the oversold bounce that I was looking for and kind of talking about. And generally, I talk about that first bounce going to the 21 EMA. And on this case, because of the way the pattern was setting up, it would be the daily 21 EMA. So price has reached the 21 EMA. And if I were in gold, I'd be getting out right here because it's hit my target. And for those of you who are subscribed to Moxie and understand the rules, then this is the leg, this is the heel, and this is the arch of the foot. And where does the arch of the foot typically go to? So that's why I'd be looking at this to come back down. And another way to look at that is on the hourly. This is the first time that price has crossed the hourly 50. I would generally be looking for, at some point, price to come back down to the hourly 50. And if it holds, that would be a more desirable place for me to go long on something like gold, if that's going to go. Now, of course, gold can keep moving up. It can keep following the 15-minute 50. But generally, based on the patterns that I know, it's where I need it to be. It's basically where I need it to be, and I'd be looking forward to start coming back down to test some lows or low area. All right, then Stitch Fix. Looking at this one, again, along the lines of Palantir and EC and all these things that, what's the situation? There is a gap between price and the daily 50. And right now, what it's trying to do is kind of just work off its, I guess, energy here on the hourly, or it's trying to get closer to the hourly 200 to where it can then cut through the hourly 200 and go down. But Stitch Fix has not been along this entire time because the Moxie indicator is below 0, even though price has been going sideways. So the Moxie indicator is telling me that there is no long available here, and that I'd actually be wondering if price is going to eventually come back down to the daily 50. If so, then there's an opportunity to go short for you, and that might be of interest to you if you guys are looking to go short. All right, and then SONO. Bigger picture, this thing's kind of just getting chopped around. Yes, it's a double bottom, but a double bottom is only a double bottom if it works. Otherwise, it's a resting place until price goes lower because people are trying to decide if we're going to go lower or not. When I look at this and I say, well, I see price running right into the underside of a downtrending daily 50. That might be an issue. And you can see here, price is also kind of running into the underside of a hourly 200. So there might be possibility of, if this thing wants to go lower, that it could head back down to the daily 200. It's a possibility. Otherwise, maybe it's going to chop. I don't quite see it wanting to go up right now, mostly because of that daily 50. Imran, good to see you. And Disney, we kind of look at this. This is the other side of what SONO could do, which is basically nothing. You can see here that Disney has been running into the underside of its downtrending daily 50, and the Moxie indicator is below 0, and there is room between price and the daily 200, but it just didn't go anywhere. So that's the other side of it. Maybe it does eventually go someplace, but you do have to be prepared that, maybe they just don't want to go anyplace. So they could just go sideways for quite some time, which is kind of like the IWM, which is kind of like the FFTY, which is the IBD 50. There could be just a lot of sideways movement. These names don't necessarily have to go anyplace, and they don't necessarily have to implode. PLL, kind of another example of that. Yeah, today's down because why? Well, it wanted to come back down to the daily 50. Okay, but essentially, look how this thing has been going nowhere for a very long time. That is also the problem that we could be getting into with some of these names is you think they're going to go someplace, whether it's long or short, and they just don't go. So that's kind of the problem with stock trading. You're like, okay, are these things going to go? I need them to move, and then they just don't really move, and you're like, okay, I'm not really losing anything, but I'm not making anything, and as long as you don't have options, then you're not losing theta either. So those can be kind of problematic. All right, so for the most part, that's kind of what I've got. We've been looking at some other names and things, but with this market being just so darn elevated, which looking at this now, it's even up even higher. Are we serious? Amazon, let's look at that thing. It just keeps pushing. I don't know if this was because Bezos left and going to space, or something else. I mean, it sure seems like it was the Bezos news, which I think is funny. They're like, oh, yeah. I don't know if it's like, rah, rah, look at our ex-CEO going to space and Amazon's amazing, or if they're like, yeah, thank goodness he's gone, and now we can do what we want to do. So whatever it is, Amazon is definitely pushing. And at some point, it'll pull back too. You just know at some point they pull back. And then Apple getting kind of insane here. It's starting to go vertical, like, up, hockey stick. And that doesn't last too long. It's usually like a blow off top. All right. So just don't be surprised. Here you can see like there's a double top right there. Just don't be surprised if when these things wear out. It's been fun. It's been a good ride, all that kind of stuff. But just they pull back, okay? And when they pull back, they can pull back hard. Yes, Samuk, you're right. Amazon did the sideways chop for 7 months before hitting all-time highs this week. Okay, so that's a nuisance. It's not fun, but that is also what could be in store for the IBD 50, for the IWM. It could be in store for a lot of names. A lot of us have been talking about the IDEX. Yeah, IDEX has been just bleeding down, but if you look on the monthly and weekly, I mean, look at this thing. It's just kind of just been going sideways, mostly sideways. Probably just waiting for the monthly 50. So there's been a lot of this to where they've just been hanging out, not really going anywhere too fast. Even Tesla. What has Tesla been doing? Tesla has been mostly going sideways for months. So that's kind of where we're at. We've had some really, really huge moves, and now the market really wants to rest. And now the moves that we're seeing are just in handful of stocks. So pick them right, get out of ones that aren't working, and then we'll just kind of patiently wait until things want to start ramping up again. Maybe that's going to be when the school year starts. We get all the hedge fund traders and big traders back off from vacation, and everyone starts getting re-engaged with the market. Maybe we get some life and activity at that point. All right, everyone, you guys take care, and I will talk to you next week. Just remember, if you're interested to find a little bit more about me, profitpilot.com. Later, guys.